Patreon. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the new patrons that have joined recently. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. So this video is called, Do I Need to Be Off-Grid? It's a valid question. A lot of people talk about off-grid. They talk about homesteading. They talk about, going out and doing the things, having a farm, stuff like that. So, first of all, let's talk about off-grid. What does off-grid mean? Off-grid, first of all, does not mean that you don't have power. It doesn't mean that you don't have computers. It doesn't mean you don't have a cell phone. It doesn't mean you don't have lights in your house. It doesn't mean you don't have a refrigerator or a microwave. You can have every single thing that you have in your house right now and be off-grid if you have a big enough setup to power that stuff. If it's set up properly, it can provide just as much as you want, just as much as you're willing to spend on the solar, wind, whatever alternative method you can go with. If you got hydro, like water, like a water wheel, water power, whatever it may be. Usually it's wind or solar are the two most common. If you got a big enough setup, you can have everything you have now. Most people choose not to. Most people choose to downsize a little bit, live simpler. So that first off, that's not what off-grid means. A lot of people are like, oh, they make comments about that, like off-grid, meaning, oh, you're not off-grid, you have a cell phone. That's not what it means at all, first off. So do you need to be off-grid? You don't have to be, no. Is it a good idea? Yeah, I think it is a very good idea. I'm not off-grid. Our bug-out location is an off-grid cabin, way up in the mountains in the middle of nowhere where there's probably 5 people within 5 miles of me. It's even a little bit too remote if you're talking about like mag team tribe type stuff. But I would have my mag hopefully joining me there or traveling there with me. So, off-grid, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say negatives, I would say difficulties involved with that and costs. You got to have it set up. There's a lot of research that needs to be done. I'm not going to go into the whole like solar, wind power and the amperage requirements and all the battery banks and the inverters and all the stuff like that. I'm not a guru on that. I know a little bit about it. Our bug out location is completely off-grid, totally. I mean, there's no way of making power other than a generator, which you can also be off-grid with a generator. I forgot to say that. I forgot to mention that as a method of providing power. It's just with that you need fuel, which isn't very sustainable. I like solar and wind, are my two favorites, especially where the properties we're talking about and what works for them in that location. So those are what works for me. But do you need to be off-grid? No, you don't have to be off-grid. Like I said, it is beneficial, yes. But rural, the more rural you can get, with the exception of extremely too rural, like if you live way back where it's, a couple hour plane ride into the Alaskan, wilderness, then yeah, that's probably a little too remote. But hey, if that's you, go for it. That's awesome. But yeah, just remote, rural property. Homestead type thing is what I recommend. But no, I mean, you don't have to be off-grid. I think that off-grid is awesome, though, because it leaves you less reliant on the powers that be, the power company. But another thing is, though, you can also, instead of having the whole off-grid set up, you can still be on grid like me, but not be reliant on the grid. How do you do that? Well, I'll tell you how I do that. Our refrigerators, freezers, and stuff like that, yeah, we would have to make sacrifices. But the way we prep with the thoughts and the idea that we're not going to have power. So we're counting on not having power. I also prep to not have my vehicles. I don't count on my vehicles because EMP, CME, all that kind of stuff, solar flares, or militarized EMP, shutting down, everything, frying everything, which is different than just the power grid being down. But I think if that is a possibility, I mean, if I can use my vehicles, great. That gives me a heads up. I'm in a much better situation with them than without them. But I don't count on them. I don't count on having them, just like I don't count on having power. If you plan and you prepare accordingly to not need your vehicles or to not need power, then that is the way to go, I think. That's my recommendation to you guys here, because I care about you and I want you to be successful. Off-grid is great, yes. Homesteady is great. You know, doing the homesteady things, awesome. But you can have a little homestead. This is a little homestead. I've never divulged how much acreage we have because, you know, I love you guys, but it's still none ya. And not being rude, you guys know that. But, you know, I don't have tons of room here. So, but we make do with what we have. We're shooting for a better situation in the Ozark area is where we're really looking for. So, but yeah, you don't have to be, it's about self-reliance and self-sufficiency. It's not necessarily on-grid, off-grid, whatever it may be. Although, yes, I would say an off-grid homestead in a rural area that is low population density but still has some population in an area of like-minded people in a good climate for growing, long growing seasons, stuff like that, is the ultimate perfect bug out location, you know, or place to live. So, with that said, I hope you guys got something out of the video. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying here. Yeah, just my thoughts. If you really want to go off-grid, and you, okay, another thing is you can have grid-tied solar systems and you know, wind birds and stuff like that, but the way they're set up is there's no battery banks involved, so it's not really useful. Very, very limited usefulness. If you have an off-grid solar or wind turbine setup, that's way better, because then you got battery backups that'll last through the night, stuff like that. So if you're interested in that and it might work for you, look into it, research that. I did show in one of my Prepper Library videos a book about solar. It was like Alternative Energy for Patriots or something like that. I forget what it was called, but that's a really good book to get. And I'm not even sure if it's in print anymore. I got a copy from a friend who bought it, and yeah. So I hope this helps. Prep a little every day and prep at a peace of mind out of fear. I love you guys very much. Thank you for being here. I'm very appreciative of you guys, especially all you guys new coming in, and that you're sticking around, sticking with me. I really appreciate it. Blessings to you and yours.